Until March 23, 2005, BP's Texas City, Texas refinery was one of America's most substantial energy producers. At full capacity, it processed 11 million gallons of gasoline, or roughly 3% of the country's daily consumption. But at 1:19 in the afternoon on that fateful day, a vapor cloud of combustible gas was spreading through the refinery. 60 seconds later, it found an ignition source. America's third largest refinery suffered a major explosion. The power from the blast wave set off a series of secondary explosions, decimating a large portion of the facility.
The wave of the explosion was really something to behold. A lot of windows broke within a radius of at least half a mile away. The magnitude of this one was really unprecedented. "15 people located in temporary work trailers were killed instantly. Over 170 others were counted as injured. It became one of the worst petrochemical disasters in the United States in 15 years.
The most tragic thing about this is this accident could have been prevented in any one of a dozen different places, but it wasn't, and it should have been.
The epicenter of the explosion was the refinery's isomerization unit, or ISOM. A key component of the ISOM unit is a distillation tower, called a raffinate splitter. The 164-foot distillation column separates out light hydrocarbons that are used to raise the octane level in gasoline. The process starts with feeding hydrocarbons into the tower, where they're then heated. The light vapors rise to the top, where they cool and condense, while the heavy liquid remains at the bottom. Although it stands 164 feet tall, operating guidelines limit the maximum fluid level inside at 8 feet. This allows for proper distillation and prevents overpressurizing the tower. Yet, according to investigators from the United States Chemical Safety Board, workers regularly operated the tower outside safe limits during startup.
Operators stated that it was typical practice to fill the tower to a higher level to allow for sufficient liquid and avoid a drop in the tower level when the bottom liquid was being heated up. The operators were concerned that a low liquid level in the tower could kill the startup process.
If the tower overpressurized, emergency relief valves would divert vapor and liquid to a disposal system called a blowdown drum.
The drum had a vent stack that was open to the atmosphere. This resulted in a history of releases from the stack that formed vapor clouds at or near ground level.
If you have a lot of that vapor vented to the atmosphere and there is a spark, that thing is really ripe for explosion.
A safer alternative is a flare system, which burns off vapor and collects the flammable liquid. Yet, despite ample profits, BP never fitted their blowdown drum with a flare.
If safety and mechanical integrity, reliability, and environmental protection are not being focused on, then other things take its place. And management becomes risk blind to the growing risk that there may be an imminent hazard or an imminent disaster about ready to happen.
The events that led to the disaster commenced during the early morning hours on March 23rd, as workers began feeding liquid hydrocarbons into the ISOM's raffinate tower.
The tower level began to build in the bottom 10 feet of the 164-foot tall raffinate splitter tower. At approximately 3 in the morning, the high-level alarm went off in the tower, indicating that the liquid level had reached 72% of the bottom 10 feet.
As they had on previous occasions, workers acknowledged the alarm, but continued to feed the tower. When the liquid level reached 9 feet, a secondary alarm failed, and the level continued to rise. Since the tower's level transmitter only indicated height up to 10 feet, workers soon had no way to ascertain the rising level inside. When workers completed the initial startup process that evening, 13 feet of flammable liquid hydrocarbons filled the bottom of the tower. At 10 a.m., operators resumed the startup of the ISOM unit, sending additional liquid feed into the raffinate tower. The level inside was rapidly rising.
The level transmitter was malfunctioning, giving an inaccurate level, indicating that the level was dropping while the level was actually rising rapidly towards the top of the 164-foot tall tower.
At 12:40 p.m., the level inside the tower topped 130 feet. Pressure inside the column was growing, triggering a pressure alarm in the refinery's control room. Operators quickly jumped into action. They opened a vent valve on the raffinate tower to relieve pressure and began sending the heated liquid to a storage tank.
The removal of liquid from the bottom of the tower should have helped conditions. However, the liquid leaving the bottom of the tower was hot. It was 304 degrees. There was a heat exchanger that exchanged the heat between the feed that was leaving the tower with the feed that was entering the tower. This caused the temperature of the liquid entering to jump 140 degrees.
Liquid began to boil and expand inside, eventually reaching the 164-foot ceiling and spilling into an overhead pipe. Within minutes, the pipe filled to capacity, forcing open an emergency relief valve that diverted the highly flammable liquid to the refinery's blowdown drum.
The blowdown drum began to fill with liquid, and in a matter of minutes, the blowdown drum had filled up and liquid erupted out the top of the blowdown stack in a geyser-like fashion.
A vapor cloud quickly engulfed the area. Investigators believe that a running diesel truck located 25 feet from the blowdown drum ignited the gas. The refinery's importance to America's energy needs led the United States Chemical Safety Board to investigate the disaster. They uncovered a history of shocking safety lapses at the Texas City refinery.
They had 4 episodes where they'd actually released gasoline out of the top of the same equipment that eventually caused the explosion.
In 2002, BP considered replacing their outdated blowdown drum with a flare system. Unfortunately, it took a tragedy for the oil giant to finally take action.
BP has announced and taken steps to eliminate all the blowdown drums that handle flammable hydrocarbons from the facility.
OSHA fined BP a record $21 million for egregious willful violations at its Texas City refinery. Not only was the explosion in Texas City tragic, it may be symptomatic of a much larger issue.
The whole refining industry in the United States is a disaster waiting to happen. It's absolutely obsolete, outdated, old, bad from every conceivable way that proper engineering would like it to be. We haven't had a new refinery in the United States for 30 years now. Unfortunately, the Texas City disaster, bad as it was, it's probably not going to be the last one because all the conditions are there for it to happen again.
Since the tragedy, BP has announced that it will invest $1 billion to modify and improve its Texas City facility.